Hey there guys, and welcome back. So here we are back on the GitHubs, and we are on session 10 as you can see. Ignore the fact that says uploaded 1 hour ago. I totally forgot to hit the push to when I got done at 2 o'clock. Push to GitHub. So that's why it's rated as 1 hour ago instead of 3 hours ago. Or I guess, 3 hours ago. Regardless, there are a couple things actually that I want to hit here on the GitHub page rather than going through VS Studio Code. So we'll start with that. And that is basically that. We'll start with this one. I went ahead and renamed home base to the colony officially. It's one of those things I didn't know what I was going to name the home base at first. So that's why we had home base, as you can see right here, .json. And we renamed that to colony now because now it's definitely the colony. So just updated those names. So as you can see, home base got updated here, up here. In all the imports got changed from home base to colony. One of those things, I was already using colony as the variable name for the star imports, so that didn't necessarily matter. So that was easy. And yeah, that happened were the only changes in a couple of these files. The next change is we changed loop rate. We took it out of combat and moved it over to utils because that made more sense to me, because we're gonna have multiple loops going on here. And that is the extent of the changes I want to go through really quick in GitHub. So we'll swap over to Visual Studio Code, and well, before we get started with the actual changes, I do want to touch on, we are in demos right now. I want to be in colony. That's colony.json. Just a moment. Colony.js. There we go. I almost came very close to cutting timer out of this file and moving it to utils as well. I think that may still happen in the future. The fact of the matter is that a timer is a very generic class. It's a very generic feature, and therefore it very well could and maybe should be in a generic module such as utils, since it has absolutely no bearing, like it has no direct effect within the colony file, which I've automatically lost. There it is. And let's make sure I hit keep open because we're going to be going through a few things in here. Where's keep open? There we go. So timer may not belong in here, and I might take it out eventually. So that is one thing that did not change but may change in the future, and I wanted to touch on first. Otherwise, we had a few minor errors. I will say it kind of feels like the longer I'm working on this project, the slappier I get with my code. But, probably just my imagination. Next huge change, major change in terms of time is I went through and I threw all the documentation, all the notes into the Meeple demo. Previously, the Meeple demo had like hardly any notes at all. So I went and changed that and made that significantly easier to read for people, because again, part of this is, as a demonstration. This isn't necessarily me creating a game for profit. This is me doing a demo on, I shouldn't say a demo just because I don't want to confuse you with demo.js, but demonstrating online how this is done, how I'm going about it, my process, etc. So comments are now everywhere inside of Meeple Demo. And the next thing to note about changes in Meeple Demo is, where was it? Oh yes, add Meeple. So we had the add Meeple function, but we were just basically copy pasting this insert code. Well, now I am displaying the jobs for each of the Meeple. That way you can change jobs for the Meeple. And we'll actually, you know what? That's probably a good place. We should probably, now I'm thinking about it, I should at least show you the demo first before we jump into the code, because then that will give you context for some of this stuff. So hop over here, go live. I saw my mouse rotate, but it doesn't appear to be doing anything. There we go. All right, and let me get this set up on the one of those things. Probably should have done this before the stream started, but Nobody's going to hold that against me, right? There we go. So push to live, close, and here we are over at the demo. So here's the demo. So again, we're just running with numbers. These could be progress bars. But as you can see, Meeple are gathering provisions, food, whatever you want to call it. We're at 5 now. And we're at 5 again after the hunger reset because we took 5 out. So we're at 10 now. And you'll watch, we'll complete the jobs. But at the same time we complete the jobs because of the timing on here, we take 5 back out for the hunger. So if I switch some of these guys over to charge batteries, you can see that their timers activate individually. So we have them running separately now because it took me time to change their job over. It took time to change the job over. Therefore, they are now offset and not running at the same exact time. However, their hunger timers are still at the same time because they haven't changed. They're still the same meeples. And with us only producing 4 food per 10 seconds, because it's 5 seconds per single food and 2 guys on it, but we have 5 meeples that need food every 10 seconds, we are slowly going to run out of food. I can exacerbate that by doing something like this. So now we have all the meeples, just charging batteries. And after we eat here, I'm going to really quick swap some of these over to food again. There we go. So I'll swap 3 back over. We only have 1 food here. So we're going to get some food from these guys, but we're going to need 5 food in order to feed everybody. And as you can see, we just killed off a meeple. So we are down from 5 meeples to 4 meeples because a meeple died. We are now plus on food. So I'll go ahead and reduce this again. And in just a moment, we will eat 5 food. And it looks like we just barely got the 1 provision in there, but that shouldn't happen again. So we should lose 2, it looks like, 2 of them on this next cycle. Yep, there we go. So we lost 2 of them. And now we have 1 guy producing 2 food every 10 seconds, which is enough for these 2. So this should be stasis. So this should run, in theory, forever. So we went down to 0, but we're now back up to 1. We'll hit 2 before they get hungry again. So demo is working exactly as expected. And we can add more meeple if we want. As you can see, the default is to grow food. So now we're plus on food again. Surplus. And I will hit quit demo, and that locks everything up. Stops the demo running. And we can move on to either another demo or just quitting. So that's what we got done today, visually speaking. Not GitHub. There we go. VS Code. All right, so that's what we got done today. And now you have context for this stuff I'm talking about in changes. So let's close LiteLike and let's get back to demo, demo.js. My eyes are not working, or it's not open anymore. Doesn't look like it's open anymore. So anyway, as previously stated, this is we had to add I wanted to add jobs in there, job select in there. So that's this bit of code right here. And because we added so much code, instead of keeping add meeple separate from where we generated the meeples, which used to be above add meeples, I just put that all into add meeples. So we only have 1 code. And now in order to pre-populate our 5 meeples, we just call add meeples, which is the same exact thing that gets called on the add meeples button down here. Down here. There we go. So that is that. So we added jobs, job list. And just to facilitate that, I just made a quick object right here that makes it easier to get to the jobs and stores the strings for saving the jobs to display on stream. So that makes that our life easier there. And we got a listener right here. This is select the first one to be true because the default job is grow food, which is index 0. So after we're done populating the list, we select the first one, index 0. And then, as I was about to say, we add the event listener for whenever that drop down changes, the select element changes, we change the job on the meeple. So that's the first big change in here. The next big change is obviously colony loop I added in here, which is just basically the parent of the update loop that we had previously, and that's going to contain both meeple and sectors. So here we have colony loop, and as you can see, actually, you know what? I think we had this last time, but I added sector loop in here. But anyway, we're using that now, and we are setting a timeout. So this.loop ID equals window.setTimeout. With the combat demo, we were just setting, if we wanted to quit the combat demo, we just set a flag and the combat demo quit it by itself. This time we're just breaking the loop. We're just clearing the timeout if we want to quit. So if we come back over here, this starts the loop, so this will run indefinitely forever. And up here for finish demo, we have clear timeout. So we use that loop ID to clear timeout. And then this is just disabling everything on the screen and putting the other buttons, the demo buttons, back up. Or re-enabled, however you would like to say that. So, that is, let's see, is there anything else in here? Let me check the GitHub. Pop the GitHub open. Anything else in here of note? Aside from random little errors here and there with the resources. I accidentally was calling the wrong resource object a couple times, which was annoying. Oh, yes. There is something. The alive and dead meeples on the update GUI. I tried doing this all at once. Not that one, down here. Living meeples. I tried doing this all at once. I didn't think it through, and then I screwed it up. So I decided to break it apart into 2 pieces. And that was a lot simpler. So first off, we go through each of the meeple that are on screen and check if they're still alive, instead of trying to iterate through all possible IDs until we run out of IDs, which is what I was doing before, which was not terribly intelligent. Definitely would have been a way to do that, just not the way I was doing it. So this way, just the much more straightforward. For each meeple that is on screen, check if it's still alive in the living meeples. Otherwise, for all the other meeples, for the living meeples, yeah, we add them. No, we update them. I'm sorry. I'm being stupid. Right, I'm just getting a little confused because previously I believe the code used dead meeples. Yes, that's exactly what happened. The code used to use dead meeples. I'm now using living meeples. That's what's throwing me off. So this meeples here is actually just colony.meeples. So for every meeple in the colony, we update on screen what its job timer and hunger timer is. That's the numbers that fly by really quick. So there we go. Little bit of confusion never killed anybody. Keeps me on my toes. So, next change, and we did not have much else after that. That was most of what got done. I started to implement sectors, and I'm trying to find it in Colony. Oh, that's why I can't find it, because Colony was renamed Homebase. That's why I could not find it in GitHub. Okay. So, over in the colony, first off, because we have, I'm going to close this because actually I do need that. I need colony.json. I take it back. First off, because we have 2 different loops going on here, I added more distinct event types. So we have start and end of update, which is just the colony loop. And then we have the meeple update cycle and the sector update cycle. And then we already knew about these resources modified and meeple modified. So that is those changes on that. And then again, down here, resources.quantity, I was screwing this stuff up. So really quick, inside of our this.resources, I was trying to access resource.id, but on some of my code, I was passing in, instead of the resource object, the front end was just sending in an ID. So, or actually, it wasn't even the front end. It was down here in collect from meeples, or I guess, yeah, down here. Down here was correct, and I scrolled up instead. So in update meeples, this was actually sending resource ID over to add resource, which is down here. Yeah, so this is a resource ID right here. So I screwed that up. Again, a minor thing that made me think, what the heck are you doing? But it was relatively simple to resolve once we figured out what the heck we were doing, where exactly went wrong. So now you can pass in, instead of just being resource and resource type, it can be resource, resource type, number being the ID. So it has 3 different options on add resource to add the resource, because this.resources does not care. The only thing it wants is the resource ID, which it can get from any of those 3 options. So that is that. And then, as I was saying, let's see, actually, before I say that, is there anything else before we get to sectors? Scrolling on the GitHub. Okay, that's why I thought colony loop was new. Colony loop was previously named update loop, so I changed it to colony loop instead. Meeple update timers. This was actually a pretty stupid mistake on my part. So right here, I forgot to pass in now. I believe this is the one. Update Meeple states. Yeah, okay. I forgot to pass in now to this function before, which actually screwed up my timers and made my timers run indefinitely without actually producing resources. So that was a problem. And then all right, the sector loop. Yeah, we're on to sectors now. So where is the sector loop at? There it is. This is all I've got for right now, which is just a very minimal shell. So nothing really happened here. This is basically a copy paste of up there in the Meeple loop where we send out an update. We get now, send out an update, go through the sectors, and then send out another update trigger. But more importantly, down here on oh, here's another thing I changed. Sorry. This is a very minor thing, which is why I wasn't thinking about it. This .collect flag is now cycles minus this .cycles, so it's the number of cycles that have been updated, and correspondingly is ready is now boolean instead of just returning the flag because it's no longer a flag. And as you can see from the dev note here, that's just an in case thing. That is not actually anything terribly important. We are not actually using this feature right now. However, this feature is useful if we wanted to extend the game further, as I've been talking about, introducing other ideas like individual meeples and whatnot. So, and the other reason why, as this details, is because the loop should never really run more than... the loop should never complete less often than the timer completes. There are no timers right now that run faster than 16 frames a second. So 16 times a second in terms of cycles. So this is kind of pointless because a timer will always be checked within prior to the cycles completing twice. But it's there just in case. Now sectors, as I was going to say, as we were getting to. Sectors are in a kind of weird place because each sector is an individual. So honestly, each sector could just be coded as its own individual class or something like that. For that reason, it's going to be a little difficult moving forward. So first off, we're setting the sector type, which is back to residential, scout bots, and whatever we want to add later in here. That way we can check what each sector is, because we're going to need to figure out for each sector what code runs. Now, one possibility for determining what code runs is to put that in the sector update loop, is to just check the sector type and then run code within the update loop to handle that. The other alternative is callbacks.js. Back to, I already set this up to have item callbacks separate than other things. So we could set up a list of sector callbacks and then add those sector callbacks to the sector object like we do with items and run it like that. That is definitely a possibility. However, I'm not entirely sure which way we're going about it. Beyond that, because these are... this is actually something I was thinking about before, and I think I mentioned on stream, is back to cooldowns. Cooldowns technically could be a timer over on weapons, so we could swap those out for timers, the cooldowns for timers, and that would streamline some of it. I'm trying that out right here. So we're putting a cooldown timer for each of the sectors, and we're going to run it like this and see how that works, and then again, I can go ahead and replace cooldowns over on weapons with timers, which is a reason to copy-paste, or cut-paste rather, timers out of this file and put them into utils. That way the combat module can get a hold of it a lot easier. Otherwise, beyond that, not much else happened. Obviously, a bunch happened over in the demos, and a good bit of mistake fixing because whoops. But that is basically everything that happened at this point. I believe I covered everything, aside from obviously updating sector type and collection time in here to match the objects that we updated in colony.js. And then in IO, I recall fixing a couple things. So one thing was just a very minor typo. I did obj instead of object down here for these two. The other thing I did, so sectors, we were parsing them as standard JSON, which was correct. But because we now need the sector type, we're coming back in and correcting that later. And this gets me thinking, actually, I have to take a look at the items, but I might be able to do the same thing. I might be able to do a parse standard JSON and then just go back and steal the item callback, item arguments back out. That's a possibility. Obviously, item arguments gets deleted in theory, but if we, for example, well, I guess parse standard JSON isn't really set up for it. I was going to say, if we iterate through by ourselves to get references to, actually, yeah, you know what? We can do that. So we can use parse standard JSON to get items, and then we can iterate over both at the same time. We can iterate. All right, I take it back. If we, because of the way we're doing this, instance from JSON is there. Let me hit the F12 button. F12 button. There it is. Yeah, so object.assign, object.create, class prototype, JSON. So this is actually the way we have this set up right now. Even though arguments is not an parameter for items. Let's get over to items. Items. There's. So arguments is not a parameter for items, but it doesn't necessarily, that function doesn't necessarily care because it just pastes, it just assigns and pastes the arguments back over top of it. So now an item created like that would have this dot arguments as an property, as a property. So we'd have to go, we could just iterate over the items, and then actually this is one problem I just realized, and I'm gonna have to double check weights and whatnot, because if that's the way it's doing that, then super is actually getting nothing, is what it sounds like. So I'm gonna have to reinvestigate this. Where is utils? There we go. Yeah, I'm gonna have to reinvestigate this and make sure that nothing broke. I ran the demo just to be sure when I did all the updates on the home base and colony. When I changed home base over to colony, I ran the combat demo, and combat demo was still working. Which means that item is getting correctly initialized. But I would expect item to fail because it tries to get item type.weight, and that would be undefined. So it would try to get undefined.weight, and that should fail. So unless this is not working the way that it looks like it's working, it's reading that it's working, I might be missing something. So I will investigate that. Otherwise, as I said, the whole entire point of me bringing that up is over here in IO, we may consider just tossing all this code and then going back in, generating the callback with arguments, and deleting item.arguments off of the new item object after we've overridden item.callback. So that is definitely a possibility. So that is all the updates for today, unless I missed something, but I don't think I did. So, yep, as I always say, chucking along, making good progress. Happy to be done. One half of the Meeple colony demo. Again, this is actually going to have to be renamed to colony demo rather than Meeple demo at this point, because I do think it makes sense to just have both in one, the sectors and the meeples in one demonstration. So, yep, that is everything. Thank you guys for watching if you have been, and I hope you have a great and wonderful day, afternoon, or evening, wherever you're at in the world, and I will catch you next time.